Hello everyone, and welcome to week one of the 7th Valkyrie Read Along and Director's Commentary. Coming to you live from our little studio outside in Costa Rica. The rainy season has started, but the rain has stopped for today. And it's cool and warm outside, so I'm just happy to be able to, shoot this and spend some time in the great outdoors. Sending out some love to everyone around the U.S. right now. That's home for me, and I know that there's a lot going on. It's been on my mind recently. I've just been watching it from afar, and I don't mean to bring this all down, but it's these are times of change, and hopefully times of good change. And it's not good times right now. Sometimes you have to go through a little bit of struggle and a little bit of trial and a little bit of tribulation before things get better, before things get, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it tends towards justice. That's a MLK quote, I think. It's crazy right now, and I only hope that people are inherently good, I think, and if you give people a chance to be, they will be. So I just, praying for everyone who's been affected by this, and praying that, out of these times of struggle and hardship, we come out, more unified, and we lay bare the issues that have been dividing us. Anyway, a little bit of a somber note to start the director's commentary on, but we will try and make the transition back to a little bit more joyful things. I think in times like this, you can. It's nice to be able to kind of get away, and I know for me, writing has always been a way to process what happens in the world, and to comprehend it and to write about it. Sorry that this director's commentary started on such a little somber note. We've kind of wrapped my weekly update into this as well, so c'est la vie. Anyway, my name is Colin Sharp. If I haven't introduced myself before, I'm the author and creator of the 7th Valkyrie, and we're reading along together through the series. We're doing 3 chapters a week from now the next 8 weeks, because there's 24 chapters. And this is going to be our first one. So we're going to go over a little bit of the format. First off, new readers beware. If you haven't read the series yet, please go back and do it. I'm going to be going over spoilers like nobody's business. I'm also going to be giving you an inside look behind the scenes of Slanted Reflection. Whether you're reading this on the blog, whether you are watching on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whether you are even listening on the podcast. We're going to put this out on a whole bunch of different channels, so you can listen to it and consume it in your preferred medium. But if you have not listened, read the series, go now. You can find it on 7thvalkyrie.com, and on Kindle, I think. It's also available in paperback now. It's fun if you've read the chapters, and it's a fun way to read along. If you haven't read the chapters, it's less fun if you haven't. So anyway, there's my warning. I always like to add a little spoiler warning. Anyway, and then I didn't get any questions from everyone this week. I didn't realize I didn't quite put a good platform for it. I got a few informal questions, but I think I'm going to start posting like midweek for the next few weeks, just so everyone has a place to ask any questions, because I'd love to answer you guys right here, like as you are reading. Like let's make it a dialogue. Anyway, so I took a moment to write a few of my thoughts and go through a little bit of the director's commentary on Prologue, chapters 1 and chapter 2. Anyway, starting with the very, very beginning. Prologue, Nightmare. First off, we have the prologue where we meet BC, who you may have been introduced to in the Volume 1 preview if you read Volume 0. Hopefully you did. There's not much difference from that chapter, that was, the original, the one that came with Volume 0, in terms of events, but the style actually changes a whole lot. Between when this chapter was written and when it finally came out, it was probably more than 3 years, which is probably the longest gap in 7th Valkyrie history so far, between a chapter being written and then actually seeing the light of day, without being, tossed to the the slag heap, and I definitely continued to evolve as a writer between. So you really saw some stylistic differences. It'd be interesting to go back and kind of compare the two, because the same things happen, but in a totally different way. That's something I'm actually really proud of with the series, and something I kind of had to accept as I started writing. Is I'm gonna get better, and I'm gonna hopefully get develop even more of a command of the English language, and more ideas and better writing and better skill, and I think it'll be. I want to see this evolve, and my style and my themes will change as we go. So we'll see. That's something I had to really accept when I started. Is that I'm gonna get better, and I can't just wait forever to be. I can't wait to be as good as I'm gonna be the last book to start the first one, because I'll never start it. So there will be improvement. I'm hoping that just each one keeps being better than the last. There's a general overall plan for the story. I know kind of where we're going, but there's room for flexibility and room for new ideas and room for things to kind of get a little fun and interesting. Back to the prologue. After not much BC in Volume 0, it's awesome to have some of her finally. And I'm not going to lie when I say she was actually one of the hardest characters I've ever had to try and get right. Ever since the series started 8 years ago, I've known exactly what she was to the story. But it took me a very, very long time to figure out exactly who she was. I think part of that was being a teenager / early 20s boy. And we as a group have a very hard time figuring out how women function and work and are motivated. It's just a foreign world, but it's still a foreign world to me. But getting to I always say that my experiences in life influence my experiences in the book, and how I write characters, and having the chance to meet some very complex, interesting, and wonderful female people in my life. I think she became a lot more textured of a character. It took a long time to finally get her really feeling like she did justice to the character that she should have been. And you can thank all my female friends for that. For being, for learning that no, a 19-year-old boy's perception of what a cool, badass chick would be is not actually a very complex, compelling female character. Unsurprising. As for the old city of Reen, where she lives, we've got a very interesting place that kind of evokes the image of Amsterdam and Cinque Terre. Bonus points if you spotted that on the cover my mom and dad did, because they've been there. Everything in the 7th Valkyrie draws a kernel from the real world, because I want these things to be relatable, even though they are kind of the most elevated and fantastical versions of things that could potentially exist in the real world. And what I love about the old city is just that outlaw spirit, where sex and substance are just sort of normal. They're just, they're not. It's not like, a 1990s drugs PSA where it's it's like, yeah, it's like we're all just doing drugs, having sex. This is our Gomorrah. But yeah, that was also an interesting thing for me. Velvet, the access road, the pit. They were actually all inspired by some of my favorite places in the world to party. I've had some adventures in my time traveling around the world through some very interesting places surrounded by, sex and substance. And if you look closely enough, it's always interesting because there's a very distinct reality that exists once you get past these fantasies. I went on a tour of the prostitution museum in Amsterdam when we visited, and it was it's so funny to see something that has been as a guy, you're like, oh my god, the red light district, it's this mythical place, and you go there, you're like, no, actually, just like everybody else, this is a job that people are going to and waking up, and it's well, another day at work. So I kind of wanted to capture a little bit of that, because it's I've been to some very interesting and fascinating places of kind of crazy stuff, but there's always a reality and a very normal element behind that. Part of that was also growing up in New Orleans. It's you kind of have the reality behind the fantasy. Because this is a fantasy book, so there is actual fantasy, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting part of writing here. It's I wanted to capture that. It's no, this is just this is a way of life. In terms of voices, kind of switching gears here, this chapter actually tops out for the most different ones I've used in a single chapter so far, I think. And I like the fact that each of them are pretty unique. Coming up with a character's voice usually comprises three elements: accent, pitch, and personality. And because the pit has such a colorful cast of many different personalities and many different people, men and women, many different races, it makes that like very easy to kind of give them some distance and let them each breathe. There's an example later on of where I had to get a little creative, because it was many diverse characters within sort of a same ethnic group, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Anyway, and then also finally, as the night winds down, we have the start of BC's adventure. The Machine King is coming for her, and there's a very, I've mentioned it before, there's a very dark past, coming back for BC, and she's kind of avoiding it, and she is trying to kind of move on from it, and it keeps coming back for her, most pressingly through the Machine King. So yeah, that's the prologue, and I thought I thought it kind of did a good job of setting a different tone for the whole book compared to what Volume 0 was. Volume 0 was kind of establishing Cyrus and Val, establishing this world. Really not all that much different from the standard fantasy start. It's like a guy washes up, a guy's call to action. But I really felt like this sets the tone for a little bit more of the texture and a little more of the color that we're going to have throughout the series. Very glad with how the prologue turned out, and I think it really kind of sets a foot down immediately in terms of what you can expect and in terms of what's coming. And moving on to Chapter 1, Into the Wild. Chapter 1 and the prologue both pick up directly after the end of Volume 0, and we get the second piece of this with Cyrus as he's running off into the Western Expanse, sprinting away from Edera into the very powerful forest. Kind of touching on so we get two glimpses into exactly how colorful and magical the world of the Seventh Valkyrie is in these first two chapters. It's like, bam, right here, we are in, we've been kind of on the edge of it, like Val was in this place, it was kind of, it's like, yeah, this world has a lot to offer, and I love how it's like, all right, Volume 1, we really hit the ground running. It's like it kind of slowly built, and it kind of recedes, and there's areas, but it's like I really wanted to, hit the ground running with this volume, and it's like just a little shock to your system to remember. It's like, yeah, no, this is a pretty damn magical and interesting place. There's a reason that the Ederans are afraid of the forests, and all the powers and the Freelanders that are against them. This chapter was also a real exercise in sort of raw emotion for me. I really tried to get into Cyrus's head, really tried to get into his thoughts, and like this was one of the ones that I was like sitting, a lot of times I'll be writing something, I'll be writing very, very logically, and then sometimes I write it very emotionally, where I'm feeling something, and I try and get myself into the head of my characters, and then just go like, and just like lay it out there. And this is one where I was like, it's like gasping and tears as I'm writing, like not even as I'm voice acting it, like I'm really reaching deep inside to try and capture it's like what that would feel like and really sink into it. I think the audio version does a really good job because I get to then revisit that physically. You get another level of his panic and anguish because he's been on the run, he's getting beat down again and again, it's just crushing him, and he's just this is one where it's like I have some chapters more than most, like I end up really inside the characters' heads, and this was one that was like this was a came from the heart 100%. Then you had the stag scene, which that one just kind of came to me. I have a deep awe and respect for nature, and the very colorful and wonderful and interesting and powerful creatures that exist in the wild, and that's very important to me. It goes back to before I was even a writer, and I was like reading dinosaur books as soon as I could read. and it's something that you should definitely expect more of in this series, like animals, creatures, the wild. I just love it. Like, I love getting to write, because I just think they're awesome. Like I used to watch the show on Animal Planet called The Most Extreme, and it was just about the most insane animals on the planet. And I was just, every day I would be like, Mom, can I watch The Most Extreme? She'd be like, yes, you can watch The Most Extreme. I'm like, yeah. And it was like a highlight of my day, because it was just this countdown of like crazy animals. It's like, oh, they can jump high, they can fly, they can. There's some really, if you ever want to see why I love animals, watch some old reruns of The Most Extreme, because you will see and then read dinosaur books, because I think both of those are pretty good insight into why I think animals are pretty cool. Anyway, so then we finally have the return of C, which is our lovable bastard of a voice. Cyrus and C's interactions are like one of my favorite things to write, because they just fly off the page, and they click like nothing else when I'm writing. Like I could put Cyrus and C in any situation, and I just get to and I have a good 3 pages worth of content that I have to cut down. Like I usually cut down their conversations, because it's just like boom, 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 boom. I had a friend of mine who was like, I now see what it's like to live in your brain. And I was like, I definitely don't have a voice. It's like, yes, I do. Oh, I definitely, seriously not. It's like, come on, Colin, let's not kid the good people. It's like, no, really, like I'm a totally normal person who's got just one brain, not voices that are saying, dude, come on, no one's even buying it at this point. Anyway, I promise that I don't have a voice in my head. What that says about my own mental state, well, I'll just leave that to you guys. Anyways, we wrap up, and they're sort of setting off deeper into the Western Expanse, which brings us to the final chapter that we're looking over for this episode, Chapter 2, Behind the Decadent Visage. Basically, we have the hangover from the night before, and we take a little bit of a deeper look that even behind a place as insane as the old city, people go back to normal lives afterward. It's like, and that's kind of some of the most fun that you have, is being like, oh yeah, it's a crazy night, and it's like, oh wow, like that actually happened to real people. I still remember coming down from college after crazy nights. Usually, like, we had Thursday mixers, and you'd find everybody down at the long tables, sort of getting ready for Friday. We always had chicken tenders on Friday, just greasy, gross, like alcohol sucking chicken tenders. Oh my god! I think note to self: make chicken tenders for dinner tonight. Anyway, but like that moment definitely inspired most of this chapter. Like just like waking up, it's like, oh god, who's next to me? Is my roommate alive? Like, what happened? You kind of like wander the halls, just like knocking on doors, like, hey, what happened to you? I'll get some tendies, yeah. And it's like, oh, and it's just like sharing these moments of like, oh, you remember when it's like I did a keg flip? Wow, that's amazing. Like, just the most. Oh, I just throw it back to it. And there was a time we were out one time, and these 2 big guys, just like both built like bears, a rugby player and a defensive lineman who were both in our fraternity. They got an empty keg, and they're both these big jolly dudes, and they just got the keg and they just started tossing it back and forth, like whoop, and just like, and they were getting further and further away, and they're getting a crowd, and it looks like I expected them to, like, as they're tossing this keg back and forth, I'm expecting them to like I'm expecting them to just like get like put on unitards and like hop on unicycles and run away. It was just like the most absurd thing in the world. Anyway, I don't know why I saw that story, but like you come back after seeing a moment like that, and you're like, what have we done with our lives? Like, did that really happen? And it's moments like that really make me feel like Seventh Valkyrie isn't all that much of a fantasy. You know, for all of it's got magic in it, and that's a huge part because it kind of makes absurd situations even more absurd. But like, I always feel like if I look around and like it's, if you're looking for it and you're willing to kind of take the world as it comes, like there's some awesome and interesting situations that happen just every day around you. Anyway, So all that comes back to this chapter, which you're waking up. Everyone is in various states of dress, discomfort, and disrepair. BC is just she's had a hard night the night before, and luckily Fudge comes in, and then everyone's just kind of wandering through the devastation to share the stories and put off cleaning up for a little while longer. Honestly, I remember that time after the party was sometimes more of a bonding experience than the party itself. And I just kind of wanted to show a little bit of that here. And then also, much like a crazy party, we have the one worst thing that happened the night before that we're really hoping didn't happen, and we're constantly trying to avoid, despite the fact that it's playing over and over again in our heads. Maybe one day I'll share some of those, but we're just going to leave that one again to the viewer's imagination, and to what will probably be my fraternity brothers commenting in the comments about stories that feel like the Machine King coming to me. Which is the fact that the Machine King is coming for BC, and he's got a lot of sweat. He lives rent free in her head. She's been really trying to kick him out, but she's not the best landlord. And that's a mystery that will kind of unfold over time. If you were caught off guard by some of the details of BC's character, and thought, hey, there's a bunch of stuff here that's we don't know about her, that we haven't gotten to. That's the point, at least for this. For me, the history of these characters is just as vibrant as how their histories will affect the future. And just like normal people, you rarely get a summary of their life the second you meet them. Like, it's not like I walk up to someone and say, "Hi, I'm Colin Sharp. I was born in New Orleans, raised here. I had this thing, and it's like, and that's leading to this." And it's like, no, like you kind of get like the immediacy. And for all these people, there's a rich past that kind of we explore. We go deeper into that as we get forward. Anyway, so if there's ever, and I wanted to say this because I saw a comment online where someone was like, "I really like this story. I feel like they didn't answer any of my questions." And I was like, that's the point. If you ever come across a detail that you're like, this feels like it was left here almost intentionally, and then to raise a question that was then not answered, that's because it was. I love just packing stuff in sometimes, just like here and there, that kind of imply a much larger world, and some of those things end up coming back, and it just makes it all more satisfying. Because I'm like, ooh, like I'll hang these little hooks out there, and it's like, ooh, a little, and you're just like, oh, like why would? It's like, oh, like why would he mention that? It's like, well, I might come back to it. I might just be implying, a much larger world, and I may never touch on it again. But there might be some stuff that's like that little detail that you think that kind of like sticks in your brain. And my goal is to make it so that the things that stick are good. Anyway. So, rest assured that I do have intentions to pay off these questions that I'm raising. I have a plan, and most of the time. So just ride it out. It will be worth it. Trust me. What was I talking about? BC. Coming back to BC. So there's a lot of aspects of BC and her character that we don't quite unpack yet, and that's part of the fun. We're going to get to know Cyrus, BC, Val. The stories will unfold in time. I guess the last thing I want to say about Chapter 2 is that it's one of the ones that took me, again, a very long time to get right, which is probably because it took me a long time to get BC right. Again, this was a character who took me, like, I knew who she was, or what she was, but I didn't really know who she was and how she would act. And it took me quite a few times to really settle into her. And it's funny because when I write her the right way, in a way that does justice to her, it feels right. But sometimes it takes a little while. And it's something that happens to me with a lot of characters. But BC, for some reason, she feels a little the hardest sometimes, because it's like it's just like Cyrus I have a very intimate knowledge of, Val I have a very intimate knowledge of, because they're distinctly male, and I didn't want to be BC to be like a dude with long hair and boobs. Like she's and that's very important to me. Like there's lots of people of different genders, creeds, races, ethnicities, sexualities in this story, and I wanted to try and do justice to them as much as I could. Obviously, that's opening a whole other can of worms because I don't have that experience. I can, in any writer, it's interesting because any writer, it's an act of writing a character that's different from yourself is an act of getting into someone else's skin. It's an exercise in empathy, and when you feel like you've told something right, when you've created a character that feels like it does justice, like people make sense. People normally have their own logic in a way that makes sense and feels good. And when I can look at a character who's different from me, or different from who I am, and there's obviously all these characters are. It's like it hums, it resonates, it feels right, and that's a very interesting exercise in empathy for myself. And there have been characters where I'd write them, I'd be like, it feels a little bit stereotypical, or it just feels a little flat or cartoony, and I'm like, why? I have to dig a little deeper and say, well, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? What can we draw back, and how does this affect them? And for BC, it's just like sometimes it takes me a little while. Guys writing girls, not the easiest thing in the world. I don't get you guys. I don't get you sometimes. I'm sorry. I'm very simple. Anyway, so it's like again, this is a chapter where I knew what needed to happen, but I had to kind of just run through, I had to run BC through her paces a few times. Like I wrote this a few times, just like, does that feel right? And she's like, this doesn't feel right. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I gotta do you justice. Sometimes I do have conversations with these characters. I promise you, again, I'm sane. But yeah, so this is, I don't know how long I've been running. I'll check it, but this has been kind of my first attempt at a chapter director's commentary. I see Fern and Bruce coming out to say hello. And yeah, so I hope you guys like this. We'll have it out on Instagram, Facebook, podcast, YouTube, and as a blog with all the various things. Hope you get a chance to watch it. If you haven't seen it, try to read at least 3 chapters a week, so you can catch up with us and send some questions. I'll post on social on Wednesday, and you can comment, and I'll make sure that I answer all your questions right here on the director's commentary. So anyway, I have been your host, Colin Sharp. We will see you again this week. 7th Valkyrie, Volume 1, A Slanted Reflection is out. Go enjoy it. I'm so happy with the story. People are digging it, and read along with us. So, anyway, bye.